Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Rosenzweig, and I'm founder and CEO of Rosenzweig and Company, where for 2 decades I've been helping leaders and companies to design world-class teams. Each year, through the Rosenzweig Report, which I've partnered with Female Quotient on actually for the last couple of years, I track the representation of women in leadership. The progress is real, but it's far too slow. And progress without accountability can easily stall. So I'm honored to be here with these 3 leaders who are using their platforms to turn support into action. Please join me in welcoming Matt Kerbel, Global Head of Brand Strategy at Turo, David Shing, known to many as Shingy, a digital futurist and cultural observer, and John Manulis, principal of Forward Fortune and producer of the documentary Fortunate Sons. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Before we dive in, I was wondering if I could ask each of you to spend 30 to 60 seconds just giving me a little bit more color into your background and what personally drives you in this space.
Sure. Yeah. So, very thankful to be here as a welcome ally. I was born and raised similar to Jay in Toronto, in Canada. Somebody asked me if I was ready for this panel. I said, well, I've had 40 years, and I'm from somewhere where diversity is just an extreme norm and superpower, and appreciating people equally is something that is just something that I think comes naturally. And the fact is I grew up extremely curious, and I just very much appreciate the power that diversity has in terms of having different perspectives and different people in the room, and how we can sponsor one another regardless of any of our features on the outside. So I've always been extremely passionate about it, and it's about more than accountability. It's about actually action and making a difference. So
Absolutely. David?
Yeah, sure. Hi guys, I'm Shingy. I sit at the intersection of culture and brands and technology and all that sort of bullshit. But what's really interesting to me is that fundamentally I think humans are weird. And I'm one of 10 kids, so growing up in a 2-bedroom house with 12 people in the middle of nowhere in Australia gave me a really good teaching to see what human behavior is. And it wasn't until my professional career when I shouldn't manage people, by the way. I'm an HR nightmare. That's probably why I'm a solopreneur today. But I'm an ambassador of difference because I kind of represent it in a very weird paradigm. And I was running a bunch of people. I'll tell you an intimate story amongst friends. I was running a bunch of people in the UK trying to build 13 countries for AOL back in the day. And I remember when I was hiring, by far the best leadership came from women. And it wasn't until I moved to the US, people were like, oh, there's a pay gap. And I'm like, how can there possibly be a pay gap? We fundamentally are idiots. And the issue is to find great people, get them to do great things, regardless of who they are. And the fact that it is 2025 and we're still talking about this thing and it feels like we've just had the air punched out of that conversation and we're regressing blows my mind. So it is, I don't know what I know it's an introduction to who you are, but my overarching statement is we need to obviously punch up and out, but it feels like it's a room of empty hot air 9 times out of 10. And good people, great talent should be hired in all positions. And 9 times out of 10, my experience is they've been women. And they are amazing at that tenacity.
Absolutely. John?
I grew up, fully privileged in all the ways that you can imagine, and was kind of aware of it and conscious of it. Nothing you can really do about it as a kid, but it's become a really interesting path in life as a result, because I found the most interesting people were not, and the people who had the most to bring into conversations and to embellish me and to open me up to new experiences were not the same as me. We're not privileged, and they were not from the same backgrounds or the same cultures at all. And so most of my work creatively and organizationally has been exploring that and how to do things with that in terms of storytelling, and how to do things with that in terms of systems and structures that actually scale that out and ripple it out across our culture. So that's pretty much where I come from.
Great, great. What's one value that you try to live by as a leader, especially when no one's watching? Maybe we'll start with you, Matt.
When no one's watching.
Yeah. I'll give two because I mentioned one before. So one is curiosity, for sure. The other is adaptability. I think, to Shingy's point, it's 2025. It's ludicrous that we're still having this conversation. There's been some progress made, but at the end of the day, there's also been steps taken backwards. And I think that we have to be curious enough to look at the data and adapt to the times. I mean, the fact of the matter is teams that have female leadership, whether it's public companies or private companies, perform better. Companies that have diversity in leadership perform better. Elf is an amazing example of a company that has crushed and gained share for, I think it's something like 27 consecutive quarters. And I think you have to be curious enough to listen to what people are saying. To Shingy's point, it's true. Like, the best bosses that I've ever had have been women. The best employees that have worked for me ever, or colleagues that I've had, have been women. And it's blown my mind that when we all have the same brains, we have the same hearts, we bleed the same blood, that there should be any consideration of any sort of lack of equity. If we start from a place of everybody getting the same opportunity, then it becomes a function of, okay, who can distinguish themselves based off of innovation and inspiration and effort and all those things. But the fact that these biases still exist, and we're not adapting to level the playing field so that we can actually get ahead faster by unleashing that power of diversity, not only through the lens of gender, but through the lens of everything, of perspectives, of ages, right? Like, internally at Turo, one of the things that I'm constantly doing is saying, like, are we representative of the people that we're trying to get to be our customers?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Is our team young enough? Is our team old enough? Is our team too white? Is our team too male? Right? And so I know we're here at the FQ and it's about, how we are supporting women, but for me, it's about how are we supporting anybody that has to overcome these unreasonable and unfortunate biases in modern times.
Well said. Shingy, how about you? What comes to mind when you think about a guiding value?
Okay. So yours was curiosity. Is that kind of EG equals?
I said two. I said curiosity and adaptability.
Okay, I'll be a bit different on that then, if I may.
Thank
Also,
you.
do you drive a car, or do you just always do Turo all the time? I'm just super curious,
I don't know.
brother.
In New York, I use my legs a lot.
So there's a interesting, if you haven't used the service, by the way, I'll plug it. It's bloody great. Turo's awesome because it's just a whole bunch of random experience of cars that you can test drive before you buy, which is kind of how I use it. But I will tell you two things that are, and I'm just going to tell stories if that's okay. Because,
yeah, go for it.
You mentioned Elf. I think Corey's probably the most fabulous CMO on planet Earth right now. I think she's doing really interesting, amazing things. So is Laurie Lamb, who's in there representing that brand. The fact that somebody loves a brand because they help represent the character of the brand, amen, all day, every platform, awesome. However, for me, it's about trust. There's something that happened to me for a boss that I chose my boss in AOL Europe, who was this young, spunky woman who was so charismatic. I thought, I want to work for her. And I'm probably 15 years her junior. And I thought, I wonder if she'd want to work for me, or if she'd want me to work for her. And she said to me at the time, look, I know you run media and marketing. You run marketing. Would you run media? And I said, I can tell you this. You don't know me at all, but trust me that I'll have a crack at it. And are you okay if the answer is I don't? She said, I think you're smart enough to figure it out. Go figure it out. Do you think a dude would give me that opportunity? I would say no. Very rarely. Maybe, but rarely. And so the flip side of that is, to solve that problem, I hired the editor of Vogue UK to teach her about digital, and she taught me about publishing. So the relationship of trust was, for me, it was just like, let's flatline. It's all about understanding where you can be better and I can be better together, and we can solve this problem. And there's something about the intuition of the feminine character that allows trust to also equal empathy, that equals a different type of style, that gives you the permission to do things laterally. Now being a father, it's also part of parenthood, but women do it better because they literally birth life. And so there's something very fundamental at the character of leadership that a being that can birth life has to be better from the DNA at the jump of
Agreed.
that. So
Yeah.
my point, and I'm sorry for the dribble for God's sake, but it's simply trust.
Beautiful. Well, John, your film Fortunate Sons explores identity, connection, and how men relate honestly to vulnerability. So how do those ideas influence your own leadership approach?
You know, over time, that's sort of where I've grown to recognize a way to adjust the way I came at it. I mean, I think to some extent, you know, leadership is obviously about making decisions. But what I didn't realize earlier in my career was that, you know, that those decisions and the effectiveness of them could be improved by really engaging and extending that process to have a dialogue, to be really open in an honest, really authentic way to what might come in from that dialogue, and to engage people as fully as possible, time permitting. And that was a great learning experience. And that requires listening in a really authentic way and taking it on board and being able to be adjusted by listening. And so one of the things that this film explored very clearly, it's an emotionally dramatic story. It's not a white paper. It's not academic. It has nothing to do with that. But it models this notion that trust, with trust as the basis, that if you're willing to be go into connection, if you're willing to really connect and be vulnerable and open up with people, there are tremendous wins to be had for everybody. There's tremendous strength to be had from vulnerability, and that the stigma of vulnerability as being weak, particularly for men, is horseshit, and that the real strength is vulnerability. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, 15 years ago, I thought the world would be a lot better if women ran the world. And the great comeuppance for me was realizing that if I put that into motion with an organization, I couldn't lead it, because that was obviously not gonna play properly towards that concept. But I do think that you know, achieving that ability for men and being able to help them get there is what we're trying to do with the film.
Yeah,
and the impact campaign that we're doing.
Just to build on that, like, I do wish our gender would get its head out of its ass sometimes. Like, the data is what you need to look at, right? I talked about diversity before, how those teams perform better. So strategically, you should act accordingly. Vulnerability is another one where there is study after study after study. I've seen it from HBR. I've seen it from, you know, Carnegie. There's many studies about the power of vulnerability, having more satisfied and productive teams, better retention, right? Like faster, more efficient, and more effective work because you have you know, open communication, right? And so vulnerability begets transparency, and there's a thing called the pratfall effect, where, like, if you are vulnerable, then you are essentially encouraging others to be vulnerable as well, and they see you more favorably because you are not trying to puff your chest out and try to be something and act a certain way. And you know, I think we're literally sitting at the FQ right now. This is not the Mad Men times anymore. There's value in being direct and having amazing you know, conversation. But I think it was a couple panels ago where they said, the CEO of Dig In said, you know, you have a company-wide value of leading with positive intent. You know, and then that enables you to have those conversations that are going to move the business forward. And we have to do that. We have to look at the data, and we have to understand it and not just ignore it. And then we have to act in a way where the intent is positive, and you're not just bringing people on performatively, you're actually doing what Shingy talked about, which is bring people on, get the F out of their way, and let them do what, the God-given gift they came to do and drive value for your company.
On your point about data, I couldn't agree more. In fact, year after year, my report puts out that kind of data. Yeah. And what I always say is there's two levels to this. There's the moral imperative of equality, sure, but not all business people care about the moral imperatives. So the next level down is if you can demonstrate to a business leader that the bottom line actually consistently is improved when you have a diverse group around the board table.
I'm a brand marketer. I have to prove that brand marketing affects the bottom line in everything that I do all the time.
So it's the same thing by analogy, right? So point well taken. I want to talk about the role of men in change. Why is it so important for men to be active participants in conversations about equity and leadership? We'll start again with John here, talking about Fortunate Sons, which challenges older ideas of masculinity, as you mentioned, related to vulnerability, and explores more open and connected forms of strength. So how does that perspective show up in how you lead or mentor others?
I think the mentoring is important. We tend to think of mentoring as, older to younger or something, but in fact, it's just peer-to-peer. Yeah. It's just providing safety that someone's going there and walking that path along with you, and that you're not out there alone. Some people are more comfortable being on point, and other people are not. And we can all, become stronger together in that way, I feel. What Fortunate Sons revealed was that this was a class that grew up together in 1968 in 7th grade as an all-male military school. And 50 years later, as they were approaching their 50th reunion, they started bonding and started doing conversations, and they talked, and 50 of them talked about life. And so it became an exploration of life as men who have gone through 50 years of social change, really wrenching social change that we've all lived through, for the positive, but nonetheless wrenching social change. And what was clear was that navigating that had provided great strength of character and had provided evolution that was beneficial to every guy involved, despite what the path getting there was like. And so our feeling is these conversations need to be sparked, and that a film can spark conversations. That's one of the great things film can do, is spark conversations. And those conversations ripple into families, they ripple into communities, they ripple out into the world. And in my mind, I've always made films that I called them, the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. It's like, the entertainment is what gets you and takes you through the journey, but underneath, you're changing society in nudging it along in a positive direction. And that's basically why I do what I do. And I think Fortunate Sons is just another cog in that wheel.
That's great. Matt, have you seen examples of men using their influence to open doors for women or other underrepresented talent? And if you can, give me some context.
Yeah. All the time. I mean, I think that the kindest thing we can do is say somebody's name when they're not in the room. Mm-hmm. I think that we don't have to have worked with them to know that they have great character. I heard the CEO of PacSun, talked about the conversation she had with the president of Traders, basically say, are they fun and can they get stuff done, right? Are they motivated? And ultimately, any time that men can play a role. I mean, just forget men. Like anytime anyone can play a role in helping people, particularly when they have to overcome the biases that exist, and whether or not people choose to admit that they exist, they fundamentally still exist. Like I said, progress has been made, but it's minimal, and there's so much more that can be done. And so, yeah, to the extent that I personally go out of my way to try to specifically help, whether it's women, whether it's, people of color, just anybody that has to overcome things that add an extra layer of sort of unfortunate complexity, and vouch for their character and vouch for their abilities is easy. right? That's the easiest thing you can do is basically just have that conversation, create that warm introduction, vouch for them, go out of your way. I mean, it's free, and it can literally change a life. And I'm only speaking on behalf of myself. I've definitely seen a lot of other people do it. I also think that you can use technology to do it. Like, we saw so many people getting laid off during the pandemic, and I saw countless, Google Sheets that were out there that were trying to connect, people that had been laid off with people that were, companies that were skyrocketing because of the pandemic, right? Whether that was delivery services or Peloton or whatever, who were hiring, in droves. It's just like, that's like, Google Sheets are free. Like, what can you do through action to just not just sit on your ass and like wish for the best, but actually, take control of a situation. And also, I think, to John's point, it's the narrative is just as important, right? It's screaming about this that's happening. I remember hearing a stat a few years ago from Julie Haddon, who was with the Women's National Soccer League, about how the total coverage of women's sports in sports media was only 5%. It's not 5% anymore. And that's because there's been tremendous progress, whether it's, the U.S. women's national team, whether it's obviously been the WNBA, it's and other leagues, women tennis players and golfers. It's awesome. It's amazing. And it's amazing to see that crescendo happening. But I think in the workplace, we have so much work to do, and we have to be vocal about it as allies, because we are 50% of the population. And for anything meaningful to change, we have to have a significant amount of us, doing our part to really make it so.
Absolutely. Shingy, what's your perspective in terms of how leadership has evolved and how male leadership has evolved, especially in the creative and tech kind of driven?
Yeah, I get the context to your question. Yeah. Let me get something off my chest. Yeah. There are two things that really kind of bother me a lot, just generally, is this. Many women that I've mentored over the years, and there's always this discussion like, I really just want to know what this men's club's about. And my counsel to everyone is that it's not that interesting. It's golf scores and sports and misery, of which I don't subscribe to either of that shit. And what I have noticed is that women flock together, world changes happen. This convincing of we need to figure it out. I apologize on behalf of being a man that it's a generational change for these old bastards to die off to change that attitude. What we will see is a seismic change where women continue to lead, and I would love to work for women leaders. It's awesome. So I'm mentoring much younger leaders, knowing that they absolutely will own the top job, because I said this before, when you look at DNA is for real, dude. I grew up in a household with 6 boys, 4 girls, and a whole lot of testosterone from those 6 boys. Testosterone's real. It's how you manage that testosterone either makes you a ass to deal with or somebody that's really great to work with. And we've all worked with all of it. That toxicity is just a societal change that'll have to happen. So in tech, the fintech boys firstly need to they have to sort of hang off the testosterone and understand that technology is ubiquitous. And second to that, creativity at the heart of it comes at the union of creativity. The fact that we have blocked that for too long, it comes back down to, and as I said, as a parent, when I see the ability for women to be able to multitask, hold down great jobs, and have a civilized conversation when I can barely function and I haven't even done anything, blows that data point. That's the data point. All there is, it's all bullshit. That is the data point. And it's very frustrating that it feels like it's being regressed, and I'm here, I cannot stand it. Sorry, John. Did I suck the air out of the room?
Not at all. Are you kidding me? You pumped it up, man. Pump it up. Burn it down. Burn it down. No, I was just going to say, on taking the radical further, I was just going to say that we can either clutch our dying patriarchy, or we can kind of bring a welcoming, creative energy to something powerful and productive and beneficial for everybody. And it's not a difficult choice, really.
Thanks, guys. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Shingy and John, and thank you all for joining us. What I'm taking away from this conversation is that accountability isn't only about grand gestures, it's about the everyday choices that we make when nobody's watching. And progress happens when we link empathy with structure, when we pair values with measurable action, and when we sponsor others with intention and not with ego. So each of us can choose to move from support to action, from statements to systems, and to make equality part of how we lead, not just what we believe. Thank you.